When you get married, you hear the words, do you take this man, this woman, for better or worse, in sickness and in health? So, do you take this USC team for better or worse, in sickness and in health? Is USC better or worse in certain areas in 2025?
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Colkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network your first listen every single day. Whether you are watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download this podcast, this show is always going to be free, and this show is always going to appreciate your support. Remember last season how positive most people were heading into the 2024 season, myself included. You know, especially when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Miller Moss was the Heisman winner in waiting. He was coming off that great Holiday Bowl performance. Lincoln Riley was in charge. And you know what? Just in case Coach Riley needed a backup, Lincoln Riley also, he outmaneuvered Georgia for Jaden Mayava. So if heaven forbid, Miller had gotten injured, Mayava was going to be able to step in and use his athleticism. Neither happened. Okay. Miller was eventually benched. Mayava never ended up using his legs like anticipated. However, now we've had a chance to kind of reflect year after, what went down, taking our time to kind of reevaluate, the big picture, right? Here's the first question. If we're talking about better or worse, is USC's quarterback room in a better place in 2025 compared to 2024? I think it is long term. I think USC's quarterback room is in a much better place. We already know we got Jaden Mayava. Husan Longstreet he was the highly recruited elite quarterback, and he's from Southern California, USC's backyard, Centennial High School. He has that big arm. He's got big time wheels to match. We know he's mobile. We know he can move outside the pocket and pick up yards when things break down. And, Mayava is supposed to be the experienced version of what Husan will eventually become. Not to mention, USC also has Sam Heward in case of an emergency. Break glass, you've got a former 5-star quarterback playing third string. So I think if you were to say, is USC's quarterback room better in 2025 compared to 24, I think the answer should be yes. Obviously, on paper, it's better. Now we just need to see that production show itself on the field. We know what Jaden is capable of. We just need to see him do it for more than one quarter of a game, right? So that's where we're at. But I think overall, USC's quarterback room much better than 2024. I think the only position group that had a higher confidence rate last year than at quarterback was at wide receiver. And the confidence level at wide receiver was off the charts, and for good reason. Zachariah Branch, he was a freshman All-American, special team star in the making. Deuce Robinson was going into year number 2 as the guy. And, remember, Deuce Robinson was supposed to be the second coming of, if you were Drake London and Michael Pittman, if they somehow got, forged together like steel, you'd have some sort of hybrid of the two. Instead, Deuce was just another guy. He didn't use that size that he was given at birth, that natural thing. His ball fighting skills were really lacking. Those 50-50 balls, he wasn't the guy. There was one game where it's like, all right, that's what we were looking for. But other than that, it was a 50-50 ball with Deuce Robinson going up against guys smaller than him. And then, Zachariah Branch went from lightning in a bottle to, I don't know, a dead Bic lighter. He was hot one day, great flame. And then all of a sudden he was out of juice the next day. It's like something happened from freshman year to sophomore campaign. He just disappeared. So many drop passes. Those special team skills that really, ignited the country. Like, oh, USC's got one of those dudes again. Disappeared in his second season. Both were 5 stars coming out of high school. Can't miss prospects, right? Now one is at Georgia, the other's at Florida State. So USC right now is looking for a definitive number 3 wide receiver. But that doesn't mean the room did not get better. Let me explain why. And I've talked about this before. There was too much talent in that wide receiver room last year, at least on paper. You had the 2 big NIL guys, Zach and Deuce. And then you had 2 guys who were putting up the numbers that deserved NIL type of paychecks. And that was the challenge last year. So now you've removed the locker room politics. There's no more force feeding, the ball to the NIL guys, to Zachariah and to Deuce. There was a lot of discussion behind the scenes that's what was going on. That's why the offense was kind of out of sync, out of kilter. But in 2025, Jaden Mayava, he knows who his top 2 targets are. There's no questions, right? So besides the guys that USC recruited, like DJ Jordan and the new freshman Romero Eisen, Tanuk Hines, sorry, the name was a slip in my mind for a second. You also have Prince Strawn, Zacharias Williams. I think those 2 are the perfect complementary pieces. Guys who are definitely good enough to get balls thrown their way. You want to target them at least 3 or 4 times per game, but they're not going to demand the same kind of touches or looks, that guys like Deuce Robinson or Zachariah would demand. Now, what I find interesting about that wide receiver room, so I do think that it's in a better place than last year, addition by subtraction. What I found really interesting, because we're talking about USC looking for that definitive 3rd wide receiver. We know that Lincoln Riley is going to run 3 and 4 wide receiver sets all the time. But Kyron Hudson, he jumped in the portal and went to Penn State, when obviously there was going to be a bigger window of opportunity at USC for him in his final season. So again, I don't know how much of that had to do with wanting to be the guy, but Kyron is now he's in Happy Valley, playing for James Franklin, Nittany Lions. I can't decide if the running back room is better. Woody Marks, he was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. He's gone. He's a Houston Texan. But Brian Jackson returns, along with Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, 2 guys they brought in from the transfer portal. Plus, you got Harry Dalton, Riley Wormley. Look, there's a ton of enthusiasm for Waymo, what he's capable of doing. He's been the talk of spring and fall camp. Brian Jackson, he's considered the big Lendell White guy. He's a load. And then Eli Sanders, big play guy, but can also, he's a really good pass catcher. You can line him at the slot. So the guys in 2025, or, which one are you picking? USC's running back room in 2025 or the 2024 room that also had, don't forget, had Quentin Joyner. And by the way, we should prayers up. Fight on to Quentin. He's at Texas Tech. He's going to miss the season. He's out with a knee injury. So we always wish the best for guys who leave. No ill will. Let's hope that Quentin Joyner has a quick recovery. So I think it's a toss-up. It's production, what USC had last year between Woody Marks, Quentin Joyner, and then what you saw from Brian Jackson in the bowl game. and what's on paper in 2025. That's where you have to make the decision. Is USC better? Is their running back room better in 2025 compared to 2024? Without a doubt. Let's just get through this one real quick. The defensive line, that room, significantly better. It's not a question. No shade to the guys in 2024. Well, a little bit of shade to Bear Alexander, a lot of shade. But overall, big picture, without a doubt. Coach Henne, Coach Nua, they like that room. There's a lot of good talent in there. Good mixture of veteran and freshman, young players. The coaching staff was upgraded. Chad Savage, Rob Ryan, Trovon Reed, Trumaine Carroll, strength and conditioning. So definitely better coaching staff in 2025 compared to 2024. Again, not taking anything away from Matt Entz, who's the head coach at Fresno State, but bringing in Coach Ryan, bringing in Chad Savage, who not only is a great recruiter but is going to help tight ends and the inside wide receiver position. Trovon Reed looks to be one of those guys that you want on your staff, and Trumaine Carroll. So yeah, definitely, I think much better off compared to last year. And it was a good staff last year. There is also an intangible that is USC is way better in 2025. Way better. How many times have you heard me use the word camaraderie this offseason? Well, I don't know, 100, 102, all right, 101. I have a feeling this team is really tight after what they went through last year. All those close losses. But, if you think about it, they didn't quit on the team. They didn't quit on their coaches. They kept fighting. They eventually made themselves bowl eligible, and then they took care of Texas A&M in the bowl game. They nutted up. They took care of the SEC. I think it's safe to say that in the transfer portal era, a lot of rosters really depend on the transfer portal. We know Lincoln Riley did when he first took over. But in today's era of college football, the feeling of team, there's an M and an E, there's no I in team, and camaraderie, pulling together. It's not what it used to be. However, I think USC has really cultivated that type of atmosphere, especially this year. I've heard the players talk about it. I've heard the coaches talk about it, and it's not just lip service. It's the way they're backing it up, the things they're doing, the team activities. So you take the lessons learned from last year, the close losses. You have that bond between the players and the coaching staff this year. That's the type of stuff that the teams build off of. And once they start winning, it kind of feeds the beast. And all of a sudden that camaraderie becomes like, hey, you know what? It's us against the world and nobody can beat us. So let me know. Tell me what you think. Are there other areas where USC is better in 2025 than they were in 2024? Let me know. Hit me up in the comments section. In the next segment, I got your DJ Wingfield news update. It's not good news. And in the third segment, remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. You'll understand what I'm talking about when we get to the third segment. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. The preseason is already heating up. In fact, it's here. It's almost over. And the college football season is like right around the corner. Like this weekend, whether you've got your eye on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. Trojan fans, which USC Trojan are you most excited to watch put up numbers this year? Caleb Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Woody Marks. How many interceptions will Kalen Bullock get in 2025? PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players On their stat projections, it's that simple. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. And the flex play option from PrizePicks is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you still doubled your money. And always remember, PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePicks apps today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. When I'm on my top of my hydration, yep, everything's working great. Everything feels good. When you've got enough fluid, when you're hydrated, my energy, my mood, my focus, everything feels better. Getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy, though. Some people, they kind of put it off, make it a secondary item. But I found something that makes it easy. It's called Drip Drop. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of the leading sports drink. Look, I already drink a lot of water every day, so staying hydrated, it's natural, it's easy. Now it tastes good too. I just grabbed one of my favorite flavor powders. Say that 3 times fast. I rip it open, I pour it in, I mix it, I drink it. It's done. It's that simple. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head on over to dripdrop.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get 20% off. DJ Wingfield's hearing for a preliminary injunction. It took place today, August 18th, and it doesn't look good. It does not look good. In fact, it appears to be a long shot that Judge Selna is going to grant him that injunction. In fact, the judge denied the injunction in a tentative order because he didn't find, that the NCAA's 5-year rule was commercial in nature. In other words, it's not something that you can monetize, that you should be able to take advantage of to make money. Of note in Judge Selna's tentative order, he wrote that the 5-month delay in Wingfield's requesting a temporary restraining order after being ruled ineligible in March weakened the urgency of Wingfield's claims of irreparable harm. So basically, the judge is supposed to give his final ruling, I would imagine, in the next 24 hours, day or two. If he denies the preliminary injunction, bottom line is this: DJ will not be able to practice or play with USC this fall. Period. End of story. That's it. Game over. So I think the judge is kind of wondering, is like, why did it take USC and DJ so long to file for the injunction? They've known about it since at least March. So this is definitely going to be, it's going to be a blow to Wingfield and USC. Both parties, especially DJ, thought that they were under the impression that they were going to be included in that whole NCAA extending to players who played at JC. That whole, they thought, hey, you know what? I'm in that group. I'm going to get that extra year as well. Well, his eligibility expired last year at Purdue. So there, even though there are several players who fit the same situation that Wingfield's in right now, as far as the timeline, junior college players and FBS players, it just, for whatever reason, other courts have ruled in favor of the waiver. Judge Selna doesn't see it the same way. So it's that whole lack of consistency with the rules interpretation. And that's what's so frustrating. Quote, "This is another illustration of how inconsistent these rulings have been, Boise State law professor Sam C. Ehrlich told On3's Pete Nakos. Judges are very clearly disagreeing with each other on a particular legal issue, whether the rules are commercial and it's allowing some players to get an extra year and others not to, despite nearly identical relevant facts. This will be hopefully resolved in the next few months at the appellate level, but that won't help the players who justifiably feel like they're getting treated unfairly just because they unluckily drew the wrong judge. End quote. So it's just a matter of why is one judge looking at it this way? Why is another looking at it this way? And the players are like, someone explain it to me, please. Why is this happening? Why does that player get to play? And why do I not get to play? So just to break it down again, DJ played at El Camino Junior College in 2019. 2020 was the COVID year. 2021, he played. Then he played at New Mexico in 2023, full season. He played a full season at Purdue, 2024. He redshirted a medical redshirt, where he only played one game in 2022. So, where DJ's arguing that the NCAA's 5-year rule as applied to former JUCO athletes is anti-competitive and violative of antitrust law, he's requested a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction seeking to enjoin the NCAA from enforcing the 5-year rule that's going to bar him from playing for USC in 2025. There's a lot of legalese in there, okay? Essentially, the bottom line is this. He has played 4 full seasons. Judge Selna sees the rule as you're allocated 5 years to play 4. The NCAA fulfilled their end of the obligation, and you played 4 years. Look, we feel terrible for DJ. Bottom line, right? You feel bad for the young man because he's kind of just in no man's land right now. I guess what I'm reading into this is Judge Selna would have ruled differently had USC and DJ put their request in sooner, because that was part of his argument against. The bottom line is this: the whole situation sucks. But at least I think USC can now just move forward. As much as you don't want to, you move forward. So is Micah Banuelos, is he the next man up? I gave my everydayers some preliminary options of what the O-line could look like when USC kicks off in 11 more days against Missouri State, beat the Bears. I think the starting offensive line is going to be Elijah Page, Micah Banuelos, either Jayon Ray Reed or Killian O'Connor at center, Alani Noah right guard, Tobias Raymond at right tackle, or you're going to have Elijah Page left tackle. You're going to have Tobias Raymond left guard, Reed or Killian at center. Maybe Kalon Miller slides in at right guard, and then you get Justin Tauanu at right tackle. That's, again, just one combination that they can throw out there. We'll see what happens. But as it is, that's the domino effect of what happens with DJ Wingfield. USC brought him in during, out of the transfer portal for spring. Seemed to be okay. Now we're wondering, should USC have brought in at least one more offensive lineman? We'll never know. They thought they had all their ducks in a row. Apparently not. All right. One more segment to go. Remember the Alamo. We're going to talk about preseason bowl predictions. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about this. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait around? Probably not. You moved on. You found somebody who was willing to answer the phone. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Are you one of those who juggles 2 phones just to keep your business and personal calls separate? OpenPhone solved that instantly. Another great feature from OpenPhone: your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. So there's no more of the who's handling this. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's OpenPhone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. So USC preseason bowl projections, they're starting to hit the hitting publications again. They've been doing this throughout the offseason, but now these are the official preseason bowl projections. I got a few of them for you. This one's from Athlon Sports, Steve Lasan. He's got USC going to the Alamo Bowl. That's going to take place December 30th, San Antonio, Texas. He's predicting USC is going to take on Texas Tech, of all teams. Texas Tech, they've done really well in the transfer portal during the offseason as far as names. I mentioned Quentin Joyner. They also brought in David Bailey from Stanford. There was one other big name that's slipping my mind right now. Nevertheless, they bolstered their roster. And unfortunately, Quentin's going to be out for the season. Maybe he'll be back in time for the bowl game. Doubtful, but we hope he is. USC, they played Texas Tech 3 times. They're 3-0. Last time they actually played them was in the Cotton Bowl back in 1994. Keyshawn Johnson went off. ESPN, they got a couple of guys who have put in their preseason bowl predictions. You got Kyle Bonagura. You got Mark Schlabach. Each of them have a different view. Mark Schlabach says, yep, USC, you're going to the Alamo Bowl, but you're not playing Texas Tech. He's got them going up against Kansas State. USC, we know, is 0-2 versus Kansas State. That happened in 2001, 2002. USC lost a really tight game at home. I think the only offensive touchdown was a Kansas State offensive lineman fell on a fumble in the end zone. That was their only offensive touchdown. I think it was 10-6, 10-7. I think USC lost that game 10-6. And then we remember 2002, Mike Williams, man, BMW. He had a really difficult game that day. Too many turnovers, too many drop passes. That's how USC ended up losing that series. So Mark Schlabach, he thinks USC's taking on Kansas State in the Alamo Bowl. Kyle Bonagura thinks USC's going back to the Holiday Bowl. And they picked an old foe, Georgia Tech. We all remember the last time USC played Georgia Tech in the Sun Bowl. So we don't want to see that game. We don't. Look, Alamo Bowl, Holiday Bowl, sure, fun bowl games, but that's not where USC wants to end up. CBS Sports, well, they've got USC playing Duke in the Holiday Bowl. So it looks like it's going to be one or two bowls for USC this year, either the Alamo or the Holiday. By the way, the Trojans all-time versus Duke, they're 3-0. 3-0. I guess their greatest, I wasn't around for this one, but back in 1939, Duke was really, really, really good. They were 9-0. They went undefeated that year. You want to talk about good defense? When the Blue Devils showed up for the Rose Bowl, they had played 9 games, won all 9. No one had scored on them all season. That's crazy, right? No one scored on Duke all season long. Not a field goal. Nothing. Anyways, USC ended up winning that game 7-0. They scored a touchdown in, I think, the final minute of the game. That's how good Duke's defense was. How good is Duke going to be in 2025? And here's why I'm asking this question. And I need your feedback. What if Duke beats Illinois in week 1? Remember, this weekend, week 0, college football kicks off. I think Illinois plays Western Illinois. But in their second game, week 1, following week, They travel to Durham, North Carolina, and they're going to take on the Dukies. Duke's expected to finish 6th in the ACC this year. Duke's going to have a really good defensive team this year. Last year, they tied for the lead with SMU for sacks, 43. They led the league outright with 116 tackles for loss. And Duke is expected to be really solid again on that side of the ball, especially up front. This game's early in the season. So what happens to Illinois' ranking when USC travels to Champaign? Because remember, that's supposed to be the Trojans' first statement game of the season. We know who they open up with at home, first 2 games. Then they travel to Purdue, nothing there. Come home, play Michigan State, and then take on what, Illinois is opening up the season ranked 12th in the country. So if they should happen to lose to Duke, how far do they fall in the polls? And how does a 1-loss Illinois look on USC's resume if USC beats them? Because now all of a sudden they got 2 losses. So just food for thought. Kind of throwing it out there. I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I guess we want Illinois to win that game, right? Just for that helps out USC. And you don't want Illinois coming in with a loss on their resume thinking, all right, well, we got to make it up. We have to beat an unranked USC team or a, USC ranked barely in the top 25 after going 4-0 to open the season against the 4 teams I spoke about. So just thought there was a little bit of coincidence there that someone's picking USC to play Duke in the bowl game following the season, and Duke can play a role in what happens to USC this season because they play Illinois, week 1, second game of the season. Let me know. All right, there we go. Another episode in the books. I'll be back again with another episode tomorrow. That's what we do around here 5 times a week. And when we're done making Locked On USC your first listen, check out Brian Smith of the Portal, part of the Locked On Network. You can watch that on YouTube. And then when you're done with Locked On, get over to wearesc.com. We've got that $1 subscription special. You're going to want to take advantage of it. Season's right around the corner, right? And don't forget Inside the Trojan Huddle, the panel show this week. Had a really nice show. Me, Chris, Eric, Greg Katz, a lot of questions where we had to make a decision. This one's going to be fan-friendly. I think you'll enjoy it, so go check it out. All right, so until that next episode of Locked On USC tomorrow, everyone, you know what to do.